She kissed him first. I need you to understand that Simone Reeves, who had not kissed anyone since the man who left without a real explanation, who had rebuilt herself so efficiently that people mistook the architecture for healing. She kissed him in a supply closet the night before my wedding, with 30 minutes of checklist still left on her tablet. I watched it happen from across a terrace 40 floors above Atlanta. Not the supply closet that came earlier that I pieced together later. What I watched was the aftermath. Her hands on the railing, knuckles white, and Carter behind her, one hand at her waist, lips at her neck, and her head tilting back against his shoulder like a woman who has finally, after a very long time, run out of reasons to hold herself upright alone. She did not run. Welcome to our channel, where we bring you emotional stories that stay with you. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. And if you're returning, thank you. Your support means everything. Now stay till the end, drop a comment with your thoughts, and let's begin. That part mattered. Because 3 hours earlier, a folded note had been pressed into her hand. A man she had once loved, waiting at the lobby bar, giving her the choice. She had read it. She had stood alone in the east corridor while the reception music played through the walls. She had put the note in her pocket and walked toward the terrace instead. I had been waiting for that moment since Tuesday. What I had not been waiting for, what none of us had planned for, was everything that tried to stop it first. Here is what you need to understand about Simone before any of this means anything. She has planned weddings for 9 years. Not because she is a romantic, she would correct you on that quietly without unkindness, but because she is exceptional at managing systems, and a wedding is at its architecture, a very complex system of moving parts and human emotion. She has a color-coded binder her assistant calls the Bible. Inside the regular timeline, a laminated backup. She has stood at the back of 43 ceremonies while couples broke open in front of each other, and she has never, not once, let anything wet reach her eyes. Emotions, she would say, are for the guest. Her job is the clock. She became my event coordinator a year before I hired her to plan my wedding to Dana. Somewhere in that year of venue walkthroughs and catering tastings and the specific intimacy of watching someone build the most important day of your life with the same focused competence she brought to every other day of hers, she became one of my closest friends. She works harder at keeping people at a safe, managed distance than she works at anything else. You would not always notice. She is warm. She is gracious. She gives you the feeling of being seen without ever letting you see too much in return. She has made a science of the almost open door. Her engagement ended 2 years before my wedding weekend. His name was David Okafor, and what he did was not dramatic. That was almost the worst part. He did not shout or betray her or arrive at some decisive catastrophe. He just withdrew. Slowly. Like a tide going out so gradually you don't notice until you're standing in sand where there used to be ocean. And then one afternoon, a 12-minute conversation. Measured. Civil. Gone. She rebuilt herself the way she does everything efficiently, completely, with no visible seams. Back at work in 8 days. 3 weddings that month. Fine. She decided, somewhere quiet and permanent inside herself, that love was a variable she could no longer afford to build a plan around. The equation still worked without it. She was not bitter. She was not broken. She was just revised. And she told herself, in the specific language of someone who does not want to examine the thing too closely, that this was peace. What she never told anyone was that David had not entirely disappeared. He called on her birthday, every year without fail, and she always answered. He appeared at the edges of her life like a footnote she could never delete, familiar enough to feel like comfort, present enough to be dangerous, close enough that she never had to find out if she had actually healed or only adapted. Carter Flynn was not supposed to be a problem. He is my oldest friend. We grew up 3 houses apart in Decatur, rode bikes in the same dead-end street, learned to drive in the same empty parking lot, before his family relocated to Boston when we were 14 and the distance became something we had to decide to maintain. We decided. 30 years after that decision, he is still the person I call when something either very good or very terrible happens, and he has never once made me feel like a burden for either. He has been through it. His divorce at 32 from a woman who wanted a quieter version of him than the one he actually was, that cost him something he spent 3 years trying to figure out how to replace. He gave her everything he had. Everything. And she handed it back gently, saying it was not quite the right shape. After that he got careful. Careful in the way that reads as ease, as warmth, as being naturally good at rooms and people and the right thing to say. But underneath I knew him, something was waiting. Waiting to remember what it felt like to reach for something without already bracing for what it would cost to lose it. He was supposed to arrive Monday. His flight got delayed in Boston, then rerouted through Charlotte. He texted at 6:47. Tell me the dinner is still happening, and walked through the door of Canu's private dining room at 7:12, still in his travel clothes, running entirely on purpose. Simone was at the far end of the room with her tablet, running a finger down the arrival checklist. She looked up when the door opened. Something crossed her face. Fast, gone in less than a second, like a word she had started to say and thought better of. Like a door swinging open and being caught before it could. Her professional expression returned so completely that I almost convinced myself I had seen nothing. Carter saw her and stopped walking. Half a beat. Maybe less. His whole body stilled in the way a body stills when it recognizes something it wasn't expecting to recognize. Then he was crossing toward me, hand extended, hug for Dana, all the right movements. He was warm and easy and fully present. And twice during dinner I caught him looking down the long table at Simone, not staring, something more careful than staring, with an expression I didn't have a name for yet. After dessert I watched him make his way toward her end. She was reviewing tomorrow's schedule, finger moving down the page with the focused efficiency of someone who has important things to finish. She finished her line before she looked up. Professional patience or something wearing its mask. Then the corner of her mouth moved, not a smile, something smaller and more guarded, something she caught and pulled back before it could finish forming, before it could give anything away. In a year of friendship I had never seen Simone Reeves almost smile at someone she had met 3 hours ago. I had seen her be warm, gracious, genuinely present. I had never seen her catch herself. I filed it carefully away, let myself feel quietly, privately pleased, and thought, okay then. What I did not know was that after the rehearsal dinner, after that almost smile, Simone returned to her room and found a message on her phone. David Okafor. Short and certain, the way he wrote when his mind was made up. I heard you're in town this week. I'd like to talk. I've been thinking about us. I think I made a mistake. She sat with the screen's glow on her face for a long time. The room quiet around her. The words not moving. She turned the phone face down, then picked it up and turned it over again. She did not reply. She opened her planning binder. She worked until 2 in the morning and was still awake at 3, and when she finally slept it was the shallow, restless sleep of someone whose mind refuses to fully release its grip. The day before a wedding is not glamorous. It is 12 hours of barely controlled emergencies and questions that were answered in emails 3 weeks ago, and the specific psychic weight of knowing the whole thing rests on you. Simone had the St. Regis Atlanta running like a military operation before 9. Florals arriving in the wrong sequence are handled. Catering timeline pushed 40 minutes by a kitchen miscommunication adjusted before anyone noticed. Sound feedback shrieking through the ballroom resolved by 10-30 minutes ahead of where the backup plan would have kicked in. I barely saw her except as motion. A flash of emerald. A clipboard. The particular certainty of someone who has done this so many times that competence has become something close to grace. Carter had no official duties until the ceremony the following day. By noon I understood he had spent the entire morning finding reasons to be wherever Simone was. The centerpiece story reached me through 3 people. The florist told the catering manager, who told Dana, who told me over lunch with the expression of a woman watching something she is very pleased about. Carter had wandered into the ballroom while Simone was moving a centerpiece 2 inches left, then 2 back, then left again, head tilted at an angle that meant she was reading something invisible to everyone else. He watched for a moment. Just watched, without announcing himself, giving her the space to be exactly who she was before she knew she had an audience. Then, quietly, "What are you looking for?" She didn't startle. That detail interested me, that his presence didn't startle her, as if some part of her had already known he was there. The light hits differently here in the evening. I'm trying to account for where the shadows fall. He moved beside her. Stood there. Both of them looking at the arrangement in the same direction, two people consulting the same invisible thing. "The candles will fix it," he said finally. "When they're lit, the whole room will change. Everything will pull together. You'll see." She looked at him. A full, unhurried, considering look. "You know about event lighting. I know about waiting to see something in the right light before I decide what it is." A beat of silence. Not awkwardly waited. The kind of silence that means something has been said that both people understand is about more than the thing that was said. He didn't look away from the centerpiece. She didn't look away from him. The florist reported that Simone stared at him for 3 full seconds, which, for Simone, is a very long time, and then picked up her tablet and walked to the next table. Smiling at it. Barely. But smiling. What happened next, no one told me. I pieced it together afterward, from fragments, from silences, from the particular way someone's hands behave when they think no one is watching. David Okafor arrived at the St. Regis at 11. He had brought coffee from the place across the street, a small, precise, David gesture, the specific language he speaks when he wants something and is trying to say it sideways. Simone was crossing the lobby when she saw him, and she stopped. Not a dramatic stop. The kind that happens before the mind decides to stop, the body stopping first because it recognizes something the mind hasn't finished processing. He said he was in Atlanta for work and had come to find her, and that he had missed her. He said all of it without drama, without performance, with the plain directness of a man who has spent 2 years rehearsing this and decided drama would only get in the way. He asked for 10 minutes. She looked at him for a long moment, at his face, at the coffee, at the lobby moving around them, and she gave him 5. He said, "I ended things because I was afraid. 2 years of regretting it. I know your answer might be no. I'm asking anyway." She said nothing for a long time. The lobby moved around them, guests, bellmen, the ambient noise of a hotel in motion, indifferent. She was very still inside all of it. Still in the way she gets when she is thinking something through that costs her something to think. Then finally, "I have a wedding to run, David." And she walked back toward the ballroom, and her hands were not entirely steady on the clipboard, and she kept her eyes forward, and she did not let herself look back. Carter came around the corridor corner and caught the last of it. Simone's back, retreating, the straight-shouldered, controlled retreat of a woman who does not allow herself to be seen retreating. The man by the window watching her go with the careful patience of someone who has just opened a door and is prepared to wait indefinitely to see if anyone comes through. Carter did not know who he was. He only knew what it looked like. He stood in the corridor entrance for a long moment, watching the space where Simone had been. Then he filed it behind his eyes, managed and still, and kept the rest of the day. That afternoon the string quartet collapsed, a family emergency pulling the first violinist, the agency not picking up, the backup option 2 hours and a bridge away. I found Simone in the back corridor with her phone pressed to her ear and her free hand flat against the wall, not holding herself up exactly, but needing the wall to be there. Carter was 3 feet opposite, leaning against the other wall, saying nothing. Not watching her with concern, not making it a moment, just present. Occupying the same space without demanding anything from it. He had set a bottle of water on the small side table beside her at some point, placed it without interrupting, without making eye contact, without attaching anything to the gesture at all. She hadn't looked at it. But the second it appeared, her shoulders dropped fractionally, barely the way a body drops when it realizes it no longer has to carry something completely alone. She solved the problem in 22 minutes. When she hung up, she put her head back against the wall and closed her eyes. Just breathe. The long, slow exhale of a person who has just outrun something terrible and is now standing still for the first time and feeling where it hurts. Solved? Carter said. Quiet. Not pressing. Solved. She didn't open her eyes immediately. A beat passed. You're really good at this. I know. She said it the way you say something you have had to prove so many times that the proving has worn a groove in you. Not arrogant. Tired. The exhaustion of competence that no one has ever thought to take off your hands. The silence stretched. She finally opened her eyes and looked at the ceiling. Carter was still across from her, still not pressing, still just there. And then, quiet enough that I had to hold my breath to catch it, "When's the last time someone took care of something for you?" She looked at him. He was already looking at her. And the look between them lasted a moment too long to be casual, not long enough to be named. I decided I had somewhere else to be. What I carried out of that corridor was not anything that was said. It was the image of his face while he waited, patient, undemanding, completely present, content to simply occupy the same space as her without needing anything in return. I had not seen that expression on him in years. I had almost forgotten he was capable of it. That evening I found them at a small corner table, apart enough to be private. Her shoes were off. His jacket was over the back of his chair. He was leaning forward with both forearms on the table, actually listening, not waiting for his turn, not preparing his response, actually receiving her, and she was talking, hands moving through the air in those small gestures she makes when she has forgotten to be careful. He laughed at something she said, and she looked startled by her own effect. As if she had not expected to produce that. As if she had forgotten what it felt like to make someone lean forward. I caught Dana's eye across the room. She mouthed, "Did you plan this?" I shook my head. I love them both. That is the only thing I did. What neither of us knew was that David had texted again at 9. "I'll be here through Sunday. Please think about it. If you're feeling this story, hype it so others can find it. Comment where you're watching from now. Back to the story." Simone read it under the table, while Carter was mid-sentence about something that was making her want to lean toward him rather than away. She looked at his face. She looked at the way he talked with his hands when he was interested in something, the way his whole body was oriented toward her without him seeming to notice it was. She put her phone in her bag without answering. She stayed. The storm came in from the west around 11. Thunder moving through the bones of the building, lightning turning the lobby windows white and then dark again, white and dark. Carter came back inside from wherever he had gone to think, damp shoulders, the expression of a man who went outside to resolve something and came back to find it still unresolved, still sitting in his chest like a stone he couldn't locate precisely enough to remove. We sat at the bar with bourbon. He said nothing for a long time, which is not like him. Carter fills rooms. He has always filled rooms. The silence told me everything. Then, "She's something else, man." He described the way she listened. Not performing attention, actually receiving him, tracking him, the feeling of being evaluated by someone whose judgment means something and hoping, quietly, moment by moment, that you are passing. "I keep hoping I'm passing," he said, and he almost laughed and didn't. "She's been through it," I said. "I know. I can feel it." He turned his glass. "The way she holds everything at this," he stopped. Searched for the word and didn't find the right one. "She's not going to be easy. I'm not asking her to be easy. Very quiet. Very certain. I haven't asked her for anything this whole weekend except to let me sit across from her and talk. I just want to keep knowing her. Whatever that looks like. At whatever pace. A beat. I don't want to get on a plane Sunday and pretend this week didn't happen." I asked who the man in the lobby was, the one he'd seen with Simone that afternoon. Carter went very still. He said he didn't know. Only what it looked like. And what it looked like had done something to him. He was still working out, sitting somewhere in his ribs that he kept pressing on to see if it had gone down. I knew exactly who David Okafor was. I chose to say nothing. I would regret this by Friday morning. Outside, lightning turned the whole sky white. Simone's midnight walkthrough. Every night before an event, a final pass, lights and linens, and the thousand small things that no one would notice unless they went wrong. She went to check the backup linen storage in the supply closet off the east corridor. The door swung shut behind her in a draft, and the lock caught, and she was inside. 3 knocks. Come. Evenly spaced. Simone Reeves does not panic. Panic is a form of imprecision she cannot afford. She found an overturned crate, sat on it, opened her tablet, and continued her checklist. There were 30 minutes of items left. It would have been inefficient not to use them. She told herself this very firmly and focused on the items, one by one, while the storm pressed against the walls and the fluorescent light buzzed softly above her. Carter was awake, restless, walking the hotel in the way he walks when his mind refuses to settle. He heard the knocks, 3 of them, spaced and deliberate, the knocks of someone who wants to be heard and refuses to sound desperate about it. He found the spare key at the front desk. He had the door open in 4 minutes. She was on the crate with her tablet. She looked up. He stood in the doorway with the spare key still in his hand and took her. She was on an overturned crate doing her checklist in a locked supply closet, perfectly composed, and something in his expression did a complicated thing. "You were doing your checklist," he said. "I had 30 minutes of items left." Pause. "Just long enough." Seemed inefficient not to. He laughed. And then she laughed, the helpless kind, the exhausted and relieved kind, the kind that comes from somewhere neither of them had planned, and it rose and hung in the fluorescent-lit air between them and faded. She stopped laughing before he did. She looked at him in the doorway. His shoulders still slightly damp from the storm earlier. The spare key is still in his hand. The specific quiet of two people in a small room after midnight with the thunder loud in the walls. He stopped laughing too. Neither of them moved. The air changed. It was the same air supply closet, linens, fluorescent hum, and it was entirely different air, and both of them felt it, and neither of them named it, and the naming hung between them anyway. He held out his hand. Not insistently. Not with any urgency. Just held it out, open, and let her look at it for as long as she needed to. She looked at it for a full second. Maybe longer. Long enough that he would have taken it back. She would see that. He was already beginning to fold his fingers and her hand moved and covered his before he could. He pulled her to her feet and she came up closer than either of them had calculated. The distance between their faces, she counted it without meaning to almost nothing. His thumb moved across her knuckles. What? Slowly. The way you ask a question when you already know it might be too much to ask, when you're asking anyway because you have decided the asking is worth what it might cost, and you want to make absolutely clear that the answer is hers to give. Carter. Yeah. So quiet. Just his voice. It's the night before my client's wedding. He started to let go. She felt his fingers begin to loosen and something moved through her chest, quick and certain, and her fingers tightened over his before he could finish the movement. She kissed him first. Brief and certain and a little terrifying, the kiss of someone who reached the decision before the careful, meticulous, plan everything part of her mind could catch up and list the 17 reasons against it. She pulled back. She looked at him. The storm pressing against the walls. His face in the fluorescent light. Her own heartbeat louder than all of it, louder than the thunder, louder than everything she had been telling herself for 2 years about variables and equations and things she could no longer afford. That, she said quietly, was not on the timeline. He was smiling. That specific smile, not triumphant, not relieved, something that was neither of those things in both of them. No. She gathered her things. She walked 4 steps down the corridor. She stopped. She did not turn around. Her hand rested on the wall beside her. Her shoulders rose and fell with one slow breath. Thank you. For coming to get me. He stood in the doorway watching her. The spare key is still in his hand. Anytime, he said. Quiet. Mostly to himself. To the specific, new, terrifying feeling of something beginning, not the beginning itself but the recognition of it, the moment when you understand that what you are feeling is not going away. Wedding morning. 7 o'clock. The St. Regis lobby in the calm before everything, before the beautiful catastrophe of the day made its full demands. Simone arrived early because she always arrived early. David was waiting near the entrance. He had brought coffee from the place across the street, the exact place, her exact order from 2 years ago. The fact that he remembered was not nothing, and she knew it, and he knew she knew it, and all 3 of those things hung in the space between them before either spoke. She did not take the coffee immediately. She looked at him first. At his face. In the particular way he held himself when he was trying not to seem like he was hoping for something. Is there someone else? Direct. No preamble. He always asked things plainly when he had decided the careful way was costing him more than it was protecting him. She was quiet. A beat. Then another. There might be, she said. It's very new. He took a step. Small. Barely perceptible. Then it's not too late. His voice was even, careful, the voice of a man delivering an argument he has been refining for 2 years. What we had was real, Simone. What we had ended. She held his gaze. You ended it. I'm trying to unend it. She looked at him for a long moment, with the coffee in his hand. At his face. She thought about 12 minutes and a slow withdrawal and the particular shape of absence, how it fits itself to you so perfectly over time that you stop being able to feel where you end and the missing thing begins. She looked at the coffee and she took it because her hands were cold and she had been awake since 5 and it was just coffee. A cup. Warm. It would not mean anything unless she chose to let it. Carter came out of the elevator. He saw her. He saw David. He saw the coffee and the proximity, the easy, lived-in proximity of people who have stood in the same space enough times to stop noticing it, and he understood what it looked like, and what it looked like was not what it was, but he was already walking past, and his voice was perfectly warm when he said good morning to the room, and he kept moving, and his face from the angle I would later reconstruct, his face did the thing it does when something hurts and he has decided he is not going to show it. By 8 I knew something was wrong. Carter was warm and present and correct in every visible way. The performance was flawless. It did not fool me for 1 second. The way his jaw sat. The way his eyes moved across a room without quite landing where they usually landed. He was there, and something essential of him was somewhere else, pressing on something, trying to figure out how much it cost. The ceremony was everything Simone had built it to be. The replacement violinist found at 11 the night before, in a locked supply closet in 22 minutes. The florals caught the 3 o'clock light exactly as she had calculated 3 weeks earlier, standing alone in an empty ballroom and tilting her head to read the shadows no one else could see. The room was warm in gold, gardenias and candlelight and the specific sacred air of a room full of people who have come to witness something they believe in. Dana coming down made my throat close. Made every carefully maintained piece of composure I had been holding dissolve in 4 seconds flat. Carter was beside me at the altar. "Don't go yet," he said. "Save it for the vows." I cried worse at the vows. So did he, though he will tell you it was the air conditioning. Simone was at the back of the room. Her usual post. I looked back at her once during the vows, needing to see her face for a moment, and her jaw was tight, not upset, controlled, holding something carefully that she did not want the room to see. Her expression was not longing exactly. It was recognition. The particular look of someone watching something they had stopped believing in, finding it still real, still happening right in front of them, stubbornly, beautifully alive. Carter was not watching me. He was not watching Dana. From the altar he had found Simone in her emerald dress at the back of the room, and he was looking at her with an expression. I finally had a name for the expression of a man who has understood something completely at some cost, and is still working out how to hold both the understanding and the cost. I nodded once. He turned back to the altar. His jaw tight. His hands still. Something unresolved. After the ceremony, while the guests flowed toward the reception and the corridor emptied by degrees, Carter found Simone in the ceremony room. She was doing her post-ceremony check, candles, florals, the meticulous closing of a thing she had opened, and she did not hear him come in. He stood at the doorway, watching her work. The afternoon light through the windows at the angle she had calculated weeks ago, exactly as she had predicted. She looked up and saw him and her hands still on the clipboard. "The man from the lobby," he said. "Wednesday and this morning." "Who is he?" She held his gaze. She set the clipboard down. "His name is David. He was my fiancé." Silence. The kind that takes up space. "He wants you back." "What he wants," she said carefully, "is not the same as what I want." He looked at her. Just looked, the long, steady, undefended look of a man who has been keeping something behind his eyes for 4 days and is no longer certain he has the right to keep it there. "What do you want, Simone?" She looked back at him. The question between them, live and undeflectable. The afternoon light. The smell of gardenias. The distant sound of reception music beginning its first slow measures somewhere deeper in the hotel. She crossed the room. Both hands on his face, deliberate, both hands, nothing tentative about it, and she kissed him. Longer than the first time. Deliberate in the way that comes from having made a decision and being willing to let the decision be visible. The kiss of someone who has been answering this question privately since Tuesday and is answering it aloud now, in the empty ceremony room in the afternoon light, without apology. When she broke it, she kept her forehead against his. Eyes closed. Both of them very still. His breath. Her breath. "I want to finish my job," she said. Her voice was quiet and very certain. And then I want to find you at that reception. He let out a long, slow breath, the breath of someone who has been holding something and has finally been told it's safe to set it down. He nodded. She picked up her tablet and went back to work, walking away from him toward the next task, and he stood in the empty ceremony room after she had gone and understood, with the particular clarity of the completely undone, that he would wait. For all of it. For however long. He would wait. The reception was everything she had designed, candles lit and the room transformed exactly as she had predicted, that evening when he stood beside her and spoke about seeing things in the right light. Warm and gold, gardenias and good food and happiness so thick in the air you could feel it pressing against you, wanting in. Dana and I danced. Our families danced. The night moved the way good nights moved, too fast, too full, so warm you want to hold it. But before the third hour, before Simone disappeared from her post and Carter from the bar, something happened that Dana told me the next morning. A note arrived for Simone at the venue entrance. The door staff pressed it into her hand as she was stepping away. She read it standing alone in the east corridor, the reception music warm and muffled through the walls, Atlanta spread 40 floors below the windows, her reflection faint in the dark glass. David's handwriting. David's precision. I'll be at the lobby bar until midnight. If you come, I'll know. If you don't, I'll understand. But I needed you to have the choice. She stood with the note in her hand. She stood there long enough for 3 full songs to play through on the other side of the wall. She thought about 12 minutes and a slow withdrawal. She thought about 3 weddings planned in a single month. She thought about the careful architecture of a life built around the permanent removal of a variable she had decided she could not afford, and how the architecture had held, and how she had been grateful for its holding, and how it had eventually begun to feel less like peace and more like a room she was not allowed to leave. She thought about a bottle of water appearing on a table without a word. A thumb moving across her knuckles slowly, with the care of someone who already knew the answer might be no and was asking anyway because the asking itself was the only honest thing left to do. She thought about forehead to forehead in the empty ceremony room. His breath. Her breath. The feeling of something opening. She folded the note. Put it in her pocket. Stood there one moment longer alone in the east corridor with the music on one side and the city on the other and the decision already made, she understood, already made some time ago, maybe Tuesday, maybe the supply closet, maybe the moment she kissed him first and felt the careful part of her mind go wonderfully, terrifyingly quiet. She walked toward the terrace. I stepped outside 20 minutes later. They were at the far end of it, Atlanta 40 floors below in every direction, the city all amber and white, the grid of it spreading out forever in the dark. Frankie Beverly, a low, sweet pulse through the glass behind me. Simone at the railing with both hands wrapped around it. Carter a few feet behind her, hands in his pockets, giving her all the space she needed without removing himself from it. That balance available, present, not demanding anything, not pulling at her had been who he was all weekend. Patient in the specific way of someone who understands that patience is not the same as not caring. I stayed near the door. I barely breathed. I don't do this. Her voice was low and even and I had to hold completely still to hear it over the city. This is not something I do. I know, he said. The city moved below them. A siren somewhere, blocks away, climbing and descending. I'm not easy, Carter. Pause. She was looking at the city, not at him, and the words came carefully, the way words come when they have been lived with for a long time before they are spoken. I work constantly. I overthink everything. I keep people at a distance because the last time I didn't, she stopped. Started again. It cost me more than I knew how to handle. And I put myself back together. I was completely fine. I had decided. I had made a very clear, very practical decision about what I could and could not afford. Simone. She stopped. He said nothing else for a moment. He let his voice, having said her name, be enough. Then quietly, with no performance in it at all, I didn't ask you to be easy. I haven't asked you for anything this whole weekend except to let me sit across from you and talk. I just want to keep knowing you. Whatever that looks like. At whatever pace. A beat. I don't want to get on a plane Sunday and pretend this week didn't happen. The silence that followed was very long. The city spread out below them, indifferent and glittering, And up here on the terrace it was just the two of them and the music through the glass and the enormous dark of the sky. She let go of the railing with one hand. Just one. Her knuckles had been white. She watched the color come back into them. Someone from before came back this week. Quiet. Careful. He gave me a choice tonight. I had his note in my hand and I could have walked to the lobby bar and I came out here instead. She watched the city for a moment longer. That is my answer. I needed you to know what I walked past to get here. The silence that followed was full of everything that had tried to prevent this moment: the delayed flight, the man in the lobby, the coffee that was just coffee, the 4 days of careful management and professional distance, and the practiced architecture of someone who had decided not to want things and had not succeeded. He moved behind her then. Slow. She could hear his footsteps on the terrace, each one deliberate. One hand came to her waist, the barest weight, barely more than a warmth, a question posed so gently it left her every option open. His other hand rose and she felt it before it touched her, that specific awareness of closeness, of someone in your space who you have decided you want in your space. And then his fingers moved through her curls, one careful sweep, and the back of her neck was bare and cool in the night air and his breath was warm on her skin. He was giving her every opportunity in the world to step away. She let go of the railing with her other hand. She tilted her head back against his shoulder. Her eyes closed. One hand reached back and found his thigh. The other covered his arm and pressed down slowly, deliberately, the hands of someone choosing. His lips touched her neck. One kiss. Soft and unhurried, pressed there like a word he had been carrying for 4 days and was only now allowed to say. She exhaled the long, shaking exhale of a body that has been holding something too long and has finally been given permission to set it down. He kissed her neck again. Slower. Then the place below her jaw. Then the space just behind her ear, and she made a sound that was not a word and was not silence, and her fingers tightened over his arm, and her whole body seemed to remember something it had spent 2 years very carefully forgetting. Carter. Barely sound. The shape of his name more than the name itself. His voice against her skin. If you keep doing that, I genuinely cannot think. Good. His lips moved to the hollow below her ear. You've been thinking since Tuesday. Take a night off. She laughed low and helpless and surprised by itself, the laugh of a woman who has been so careful for so long that the absence of carefulness feels like falling, and she is falling, and it turns out she doesn't mind. She turned in his arms and he let her turn, his hands moving to her sides as she faced him. Atlanta behind her. The amber light on his face. The way he was looking at her, the same way he had been looking at her since the rehearsal dinner, since the supply closet, since the first almost smile that she had caught and pulled back. Except now there was nowhere to redirect it and no reason to try, and he was not trying. She looked back at him the same way. The last few inches closed. It felt nothing like falling. It felt like something arriving. Like a window that has been painted shut for so long you forgot it was a window, and then it opens and the air that comes through is so familiar you realize you have been missing it without knowing what you were missing. He kissed her slowly, both hands rising to her face, holding it with a care that made something in her chest ache, holding it like something he did not want to rush or mishandle, like something that mattered, and she felt herself come open at some interior seam. Not break. Open. The way a hand opens. The way a room opens. She kissed him back and her hands found his shirt and held on, and the city blurred below them, 40 floors of light, and the music played through the glass, and neither of them was anywhere else in the world. When they broke apart, she kept her forehead against his. Eyes closed. His thumbs tracing her jaw with the slowness of someone who is in no hurry, who has nowhere else to be. Hi, he said. Almost a whisper. She laughed softer. Hi. You okay? A long beat. She stayed with her eyes closed, forehead to his, taking stock of something internal. Ask me again in a minute. He smiled against her forehead. And she felt it before she saw it. And then she smiled back, fully, nothing held back, not catching it, not pulling it away, the smile of a woman who has stopped doing the math and found, standing on the other side of the equation, that she is not afraid of what she finds there. I turned and went inside. Found Dana on the dance floor and settled against her. Well? Give them a while. She settled her head on my shoulder. We kept dancing. They came back inside 30 minutes later. Simone first, then Carter a few steps behind. She had touched up her lipstick. He had done nothing about the look on his face, the open, unguarded, quietly luminous look of a man who has found something he had not realized he was still capable of wanting. For Carter, who has spent years managing most things, keeping most things, being the warm and easy version of himself in all the rooms, that unguardedness was its own kind of statement. I'm not hiding this. I don't want to hide this. He found me near the dance floor and just looked at me. I raised my glass. He shook his head slowly, but he was smiling. The full one. The real one. The one I had not seen on him in 3 years, the one that reaches his eyes and stays there. The reception wound down the way good receptions do, slowly, in stages, the candles burning to their last inch, the room getting quieter and more golden as it emptied, the music softer. I ended up at a corner table with Carter while Simone did her final walkthrough. 30 years of comfortable silence. I fly home Sunday, he said. I know. Atlanta to Boston is 2 hours and change. Quiet. The last candle at our table threw long shadows. He was looking at something across the room that wasn't there. Then, I told her something before we came back inside. He stopped. Chose his words. I said, every moment I'm not touching you, I will be thinking about touching you. The candle wavered. What did she say? He smiled at the table. The private smile of a man replaying something he intends to keep, turning it over in his hands like a thing he is still getting used to the weight of. She said, I know. That's why I'm scared. And then she kissed me anyway. He looked up. Like she had decided. I looked at my oldest friend in the warm candlelit wreckage of my wedding night, completely undone in the best possible way, undone by a woman who had decided that being scared was not the same as being stopped. I thought about the folded note in her pocket. David at the lobby bar, waiting, not being chosen, patient, prepared for it, understanding. He is not a villain in this story. He is a man who took too long and arrived to find that someone else had been present, consistently, without demand, in all the ways that mattered. Time is not always fair. But sometimes it is exactly right. Simone appeared behind us. Shoes in hand, binder under her arm, curls a little looser than 12 hours ago. The particular satisfied tiredness of a thing completed down to its last detail. Something different in her eyes when they found Carter. Not managed, not professional, not the look she gives rooms and events and people she is responsible for. Open. Decided. Present. You know what the best part of my job is? What's the best part? I asked. Watching people choose each other, she said. Even when it's terrifying. A beat. Her eyes on Carter, soft and certain. Especially then. She looked back at me. You should sleep, she said to him, though she was still half looking at me. You have a flight in 2 days. I know. I have 3 venue walkthroughs tomorrow. I know that too. So. The corner of her mouth. Good night, Carter. Good night, Simone. She walked toward the elevator. At the ballroom entrance she stopped. Without turning. One hand resting against the doorframe. Her shoulders rising and falling with a single slow breath, as if her body had learned over the course of this weekend, this new gravitational pull, and kept registering it even when she was walking away. Carter. Yeah. Boston to Atlanta is the same distance as Atlanta to Boston. She walked out. He stood. Not immediately, there was a moment, just a moment, where he sat with what she had said and let it land. Then he stood and followed her to the elevator, and she heard his footsteps and turned just as he reached her, in the corridor with the dying candle glow soft at his back and the night nearly over and the hotel quiet around them. He cupped her face in both hands. He looked at her for a moment before he kissed her. Just looked, the way you look at something you want to remember exactly, the way you look at something you are not yet certain is real, and then he kissed her once more. Slow. Unhurried. Certain. The quietest of everything they had shared. The one that felt least like a beginning and most like a promise, the kind made without words because the words would have been insufficient. She looked at him when it ended. Something in her expression that was not quite a smile and not quite tears and was entirely, precisely itself. Go to sleep, Carter. The full smile. Nothing held back. Good night, Simone. The elevator doors closed. He came back and sat down. He looked at me. I raised my glass one final time. He laughed, the full, clean, uncomplicated laugh of a man having the best night of a very long and difficult stretch, and leaned back and looked up at the ceiling of the nearly empty ballroom, its dying candles and its gardenias and the soft sound of the catering staff moving quietly through the golden remains of the evening. Some things, I thought, watching him, work out exactly the way they are supposed to. Not easily. Not without the thing that tries to pull them apart showing up first, without the cost that makes the arrival mean something. Two people who had been through enough to know exactly what they were risking and chose to risk it anyway. A woman who could have walked toward the familiar, the known, the safe, who folded the note and put it in her pocket and walked toward the terrace instead. That is a choice. That is not a small thing. You just have to be patient enough to let it happen, and present enough to deserve it when it does. That's, as it turns out, is everything. What would you rate this story? Drop 0 to 10 in the comments right now. If this story moved you, hit the subscribe button for more emotional journeys every day. And if it truly touched your heart, consider leaving a super thanks. Your support helps us create more stories like this. Every contribution, big or small, means a lot. Ready for the next story? It's even more dramatic than this. Click now. Thank you for being part of this journey.